In Shakespeare's Othello, the catastrophic climax results from a domestic dispute engineered entirely through conversation, rather than a battlefield failure or a military coup. Iago manages to dismantle a marriage and a military hierarchy without ever wielding a physical weapon. The 1623 First Folio functions as a highly efficient blueprint for psychological demolition. Tracking the timeline from Act 1 to Act 5 reveals benevolism behind Desdemona's murder, driven by three intersecting systemic layers. First, the attacker's psychological impulse. Second, the sociological structure trapping the victim. And third, the linguistic imagery used as a weapon. Othello provides a clinical look at how internal drives exploit systemic vulnerabilities, specifically fragile masculinity and rigid patriarchy, through the use of corrosive, targeted imagery. The archival origins of Shakespearean criticism began here, as did a massive professional misconception introduced by the 19th century critic Samuel Taylor Coleridge. Preparing for a series of lectures in 1818, Coleridge wrote a note characterizing Iago as the motive hunting of motiveless malignity. This phrase led generations of critics to believe that Iago is an agent of chaos, with no actual drive or reason for his evil. However, Coleridge's 1812 collection of sayings, Omniana, provides the key to his actual meaning. This flowchart distinguishes Coleridge's terminology. Left, motives are superficial rationalizations. Iago assigns several, missing a promotion and rumors of cuckoldry. Right, Coleridge places impulses, the true underlying causes of conduct. Iago's actual impulses are a sadistic love of power and his intellectual superiority. Iago's stated reasons are post hoc fictions, designed to disguise these core sociopathic drivers. Iago operates as a highly driven engineer who masks his pursuit of dominance behind socially acceptable grievances. Shifting the focus to the victim, we must examine the specific sociological vulnerability of Desdemona. Conventional readings often reduce Desdemona to a passive, naive victim or a simplistic inaju, but in the opening acts, she is a transgressive actor who actively defies her father and rigid Venetian custom to marry a cultural outsider, asserting her own agency in the process. This sociogram illustrates the divided duty Desdemona faces within the rigid, oppressive boundary of Venetian patriarchy. Venetian society treats women as property, requiring a literal transfer of ownership and duty from the father to the husband. Operating inside this closed, paranoid system ensures that Desdemona's specific virtues, agency and empathy, become fatal flaws. As a diplomatic mediator, she actively advocates for Cassio's reinstatement, unknowingly stepping into Iago's snare. Venetian culture places a man's honor entirely on his wife's chastity. The mere suggestion of a cuckold status triggers intense societal terror. Iago exploits this paranoia by reframing Desdemona's mediation as adulterous deceit, causing the patriarchal boundary to constrict around her. The doting wife archetype requires self-sacrifice, forcing Desdemona to accept Othello's violence as her burden. Desdemona's destruction is the result of a patriarchal framework that weaponizes her strongest virtues against her. The delivery mechanism connecting Iago's psychological drive to Othello's sociological insecurity is his use of language. Iago's primary weapons are linguistic imagery matrices. Iago uses animalistic and monstrous motifs, calling Othello a Barbary horse and an old black ram to dehumanize him. This language exploits Othello's internalized racial insecurities and his status as a Moorish outsider. Othello eventually begins to view himself through this racist lens, which shatters his self-concept and triggers violent jealousy. This spectrum tracks the play's secondary imagery matrix, the juxtaposition of red and white. In early modern poetry, red on white represented idealized, blushing love. The white handkerchief spotted with red strawberries initially anchors this marital purity. Iago linguistically warps the handkerchief into a symbol of infidelity, moving it from the center of the spectrum into the dark red zone. The ultimate combination of red and white arrives in Act 5 as literal blood on Desdemona's white wedding sheets. Ultimately, Iago's language completely breaks down Othello's psychological defenses and slowly transforms their idealized love into an act of lethal domestic violence. Returning to the timeline, we can view the play's complete engineered system. Zooming in on the Act 5 climax, we track the final convergence. The psychological impulse locks into the node. The sociological structure provides entrapment. Linguistic imagery delivers the fatal charge. Desdemona dies asserting her innocence, stating, "A guiltless death I die." Othello's jealousy functions as a manufactured paranoia, built layer by layer according to Iago's specifications. Iago engineered the plot, but Venetian customs, the myth of the cuckold, and systemic racism provided the necessary leverage for his success. The play concludes by implicating the onlookers. We cannot condemn Iago's psychological villainy without acknowledging the complicit patriarchal structure that made his success inevitable.